What's going on YouTube? It's Teach, back again with another video and coming at you with yet another reaction and grade the mock. This time we're diving into the latest Bleacher Report mock draft, and they do this as a staff, so I wanted to do this because it's a little different than diagnosing what Jeremiah's hearing and thinking and trying to get a feel for what Kuiper thinks the board's going to play out like. This is Bleacher Report staff, and this is really heavily based on their rankings, so I'm really curious to see how they view this draft class. And we haven't done anything with Bleacher Report yet on the channel, so a little something new, but hopefully you all enjoyed. Be sure to hit that like button if you do, subscribe if you're new, and comment your thoughts down below. Who goes too high, who goes too low, who's your favorite team, and do you like the pick that BR gave your squad? We start with anything but a shocker. Carolina Panthers taking CJ Stroud. I'd be curious if there's any other route that they might go here, but it does feel like Stroud is that front runner. He's the betting favorite, has the size, most accurate passer, and I've said that multiple times here on the channel. And I say that as someone who's not uber in love with CJ Stroud. I think 4 quarterbacks deserve to go in the top 10. Stroud is one of them. And hey, I get a lot of the appeal that why Frank Reich and Carolina would want to make this move and get their guy in CJ Stroud. And that, I would assume, takes us to Bryce Young going 2 to Houston. Yeah, this pick makes a lot of sense. I think if the Texans lost Week 18 and held the number 1 pick, this would be their pick. I think this would be their selection. So to get him at 2 is an awesome win. A little bit smaller, and I understand that's going to be a concern from a durability standpoint, but also quick game, working over the middle of the field. But when it comes to being an intermediate passer, like 10-plus yards down the field, compare him to Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray and some of these other shorter QBs. I think he's the most accurate tossing over the middle of the field, 10-plus yards down the field. So I don't even think that's really a huge concern. He's got a great feel for the game, awesome footwork, great escapability out of the pocket, and once he's outside the pocket, can make a ton happen. He's a good creator as well. So big-time fan of Bryce Young. He's my QB1, and I love Houston getting their future franchise guy. Arizona then takes Will Anderson. Yeah, no real surprise here. I am curious, will we see trades in this? I mean, we're going to find out. I'm digesting this for the first time, as well as hopefully you all are as well. But yeah, Anderson, a blue chip type of defender to that defense that desperately needs it. You lose Byron Murphy, you lose Zach Allen, you kind of lost 2 of your biggest identifying pieces on that side of the ball. Let's go ahead and replenish that crop, and let's draft Will Anderson here. A guy who plays bigger than 245, can win with speed, can win with finesse, can win with his hand. I mean, not much to not like about Will Anderson as a prospect, and there's a reason why he's been kind of in this top 5 conversation for so long. Anthony Richardson into the Colts. I think this is more realistic than what we saw with the Bucky Brooks mock. 2 days ago, if memory serves, and if my schedule sticks. But, with the Colts going Tyree Wilson and maybe hoping they can get Hendon Hooker in the second, I think it's a fun idea. And I know there's actually some Colts fans who comment on my videos saying that's what they'd like to see. And hey, I am intrigued by that experiment and how that would play out. But at the same time, seeing everything Shane Steichen did, specifically with Jalen Hurts, but even before that, with rookie year Justin Herbert, how could you not want to see him paired up with the tools and traits that Anthony Richardson possess? And I love Will Levis. I'm a Will Levis defender, supporter, however you want to phrase it, and I'd be interested by that fit. But man, the running upside that Richardson possesses, and seeing how Shane Steichen, specifically once he took over for Nick Sirianni, 2 seasons ago now, he took over as the play caller like week 6, week 7, week 8, something around those times. And from that point on, like Jalen Hurts was still developing as a passer, but because they tapped into his rushing ability, you bought him time to learn on the fly. And you made that offense just, you raised the floor rather, of that offense. And then you get into this past season, and it's like, okay, well, Hurts has really taken steps forward as a passer, and they're still using him as a runner, and he becomes that much more dangerous. And because you're using him as a runner, teams are having to use spies. They're not, they're rushing contained. They're having to account for Jalen Hurts' rushing ability so much that there's more open throws, and your offensive tackles' jobs get easier because, again, edge rushers are rush containing. So, yeah, I would love to see if Indianapolis took this swing of the bat. Yeah, there's a little bit of a bust potential here, but given his rushing ability, man, I really don't think the floor is all that low for Anthony Richardson, and I think that's part of why we're starting to see in just about every mock Anthony Richardson go before Will Levis, because Levis is not good, then the floor is all the way through the basement. Anthony Richardson doesn't develop as a passer. He's still going to be a really awesome runner. Anyways, Seattle Seahawks take Jalen Carter, so back-to-back grade the mocks where we get Carter going 5 to Seattle. I've been saying, whether it's 5 to the Seahawks or it's 6 to the Lions, I think they both have great cultures and can take in a guy that, the word is that he has a little bit of maturity issues, which that's definitely a potential red flag for a lot of squads. But whether it's Pete Carroll in Seattle or it's Dan Campbell in Detroit, I think those are great places for him to go. But also they both are teams that Seattle made the playoffs. The Lions were the first team out. And adding a player like Jalen Carter at 5/6 is potentially like that next gear. Like that's that That's the Seahawks going from the 7th seed to maybe the best wild card team. Maybe. I mean, we're just talking hypotheticals here. Or giving it a real run for the NFC West. And then for Detroit, I mean, Aaron Rodgers soon to be out of the division, right? Like, you get Jalen Carter, this is your chance to make a huge push to take the NFC North as your division for years to come. But here, in this mock draft with Bleacher Report, he goes to Seattle. He's a better player than Jaren Reed. And Jaren Reed max contract value is like $5.4 million a year. And that's like heavily incentive laden. So don't really worry about Jaden Reed. But pairing up Jalen Carter with Draymond Jones, dude, you get your nickel and your dime, 4-man front. And I just don't know what guards and centers are going to do against those two pass rushers. That's going to be an absolute nightmare for opposing offenses. Then at 6, Lions take Myles Murphy. Wow, I can't even remember the last time I saw Myles Murphy this high, which is fine. Like, I understand why he has fallen down boards. We have learned more about Lukas Van Ness, right? Like, and he was also like a little bit later of a declaration for the NFL draft. And we saw Nolan Smith's combine. It's like, oh my God, this guy's a freak. Yeah, you gotta buy into those traits. And Murphy, the more you watch, it's like, yeah, man, he's not there as a pass rusher. But 6'5", 270, really good athlete. I think inherently becomes a really good run defender because of that. So he is almost Trayvon Walker mold and almost similar to what we were just talking about with Anthony Richardson because he's a twitched up athlete and a good run defender, at least in my opinion, right away. The floor is relatively high. Now, granted, this could become Clellan Ferrell 2.0, and you get like, solid athletes, and, I think Murphy's probably a little bit more of a twitchy athlete than Ferrell, but, Ferrell's kind of become this guy who's good against the run and not much else. And you want to take that guy in the top 6? For Ferrell's case, it was the top 4. Yeah, not really. Those are your day 2 guys, right? So there's a little bit of a bust factor here, just given this is the number 6 pick in the NFL draft. And would I have this be Tyree Wilson? Yeah, probably, especially over Myles Murphy, that or corner. But nonetheless, it's kind of fun to see him back this high on the board. And hey, you plug him in at that 3-tech spot, that 3-4 DN position, and because he's got Aleem McNeil on one side, Aiden Hutchinson on the other, that might buy him the time to grow as a pass rusher, and you're bringing him in immediately to shore up that run defense. And then in 2 years' time, like, you could be talking about an insane pass rush if Murphy figures it out, Hutchinson's hitting his full potential, and Aleem McNeil hopefully continues to grow. Like, that could be a really, really scary front in Detroit. Then we get to the Raiders at 7. Christian Gonzalez, I love this. Same thing we talked about in the Bucky Brooks reaction, where this guy has the size, the athleticism, scheme versatility. I understand he's my cornerback 1 because of all that, and also great movements. Like one of those guys, him and Zay Flowers. I say this all the time. It just looks like they're effortlessly gliding across a football field, and it almost looks like you're playing like Madden 98, and the graphics just aren't there, so the guy's movement skills aren't the same as everyone else, right? But Christian Gonzalez is just different, and that athleticism plus scheme versatility and a Raiders secondary that desperately needs both of those things out of a top tier potential lockdown corner. It's a perfect fit, and with Patrick Graham, with how he mixed it up between man, various zone coverages, I think Christian Gonzalez, play in and play out, can be a perfect fit for whatever Patrick Graham's asking him to be. Next up, at pick 8, we get the Falcons taking Tyree Wilson. I think this is a pretty awesome, way the board could shake out. We've seen multiple mocks where this happens, and I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities, especially if, we have quarterbacks go 1 through 4. We'll have to wait and see if that ends up happening, but if Arizona trades back from 3 and there's a quarterback that goes 3 and that pushes Wilson further and further down the board, you get this 86-inch wingspan, guy who wins with power, and a very different type of edge rusher than Arnold Ebiketie on the other side, who is your prototypical speed, finesse, bend edge rusher. So be a really awesome 1-2 punch there. And the Falcons have got to shore up that pass rush. You add David Onyemata, more so focused on the run defense side. Grady Jarrett still playing at a pretty high level. Then you add Wilson in the mix, hopefully year 2 jump from Ebiketie. And that front gets really, really scary. Would still like to see them add one more corner to be the guy opposite of Terrell, but you could easily do that in round 2 with how deep this corner class is. All right, on to pick number 9, and the Bears take Peter Skoronski. So consecutive grade demons where we see this pick. His movement skills really do present an awesome fit into that Luke Getsy zone blocking scheme. And I've said plenty of times, I think Skoronski can play anywhere on the offensive line, left tackle all the way over to right tackle. So here I think you can confidently plug him in at right tackle, give Braxton Jones another year at left tackle. I don't think he was bad for a 5th-round pick rookie last year, so let's see where he grows in year 2. Skoronski, and you just let him pave the way for Khalil Herbert and Deonta Foreman. Let him get up to the 2nd level, and he's got short arms, but because of that, the comp that you could probably make most closely to his body type is Braden Smith. Braden Smith plays right tackle, and he's been one of the best right tackles in football over the last, half decade or so. I know last year wasn't great, but, Indianapolis was just kind of a little bit of a disappointment and a little bit of a dumpster fire in and of itself. So, at least compared to where we thought, I had the Colts win the division last year, so they definitely disappointed me. But getting back on track here, Skoronski, if Smith's your comp, Smith plays right tackle, this might be the perfect fit and the perfect home for Skoronski to land in, the perfect position for him to be playing at. Eagles take Lukas Van Ness. Okay, here we go. I talked about this a little bit in the Bucky Brooks grade the mock, which, I've mentioned it enough now to where if you didn't see it, I definitely encourage you to go back and you'll understand a little bit more of this. But it was Nolan Smith who went 10, and, the rationale was, okay, well, Brandon Graham's only on a 1-year deal, and I was like, well, Smith's much more akin to, like, Hassan Reddick versus, like, Brandon Graham. Lukas Van Ness, on the other hand, is much more your Brandon Graham, can win with the bull rush, wins with power, and that get off in the offensive line, or at the line of scrimmage and turning that into power and going to the chest of tackles. Like, that's Lukas Van Ness. That's Brandon Graham. Like, that's your seamless replacement, much more than Nolan Smith being your Brandon Graham replacement. So I like the fit a ton. And, maybe he gets to the NFL and teams tell him to add on 20 pounds. I'd love to see what Van Ness next to Jordan Davis looks like as an interior pass rush duo. And Davis there ideally to be high-level run defender. That could be a really, really fun 1-2 punch there in the middle of the Eagles' defensive line. Or, like I said, just becomes a Brandon Graham replacement, and therefore it adds a lot of value in Philly. Then the Titans take Paris Johnson Jr. Yeah. Again, how many mocks have you seen this? I think the one earlier this week also had this. But tackle to the Titans, I still don't think is out of the playbook. Dillard can play guard. No guarantee that Petit Frere gets any better in year 2. Also, no guarantee like Ray Duntz is the guy at right guard. So maybe you draft Paris Johnson Jr. and that's the easiest way to work him onto the field. And you give Dillard the job at left tackle. You slot Paris Johnson Jr. right guard right next to his former teammate Petit Frere at right tackle. Maybe that's your fix. But to me, OT1, I'd love to see him playing tackle, and I'd rather move Dillard inside. But nevertheless, if this is the Titans BPA, I don't hate this pick whatsoever. And just because you made moves on the offensive line, you lost a tackle, you gained a tackle. You lost a guard, you signed a guard. Like it's been lateral movements there in Tennessee. So therefore, if it was a position of need before the draft, it's a position of need now. Then we get the Texans taking Quentin Johnston. Yeah, I've mocked this a few times, and where the Bucky Brooks mock had Jackson Smith-Njigba being the pick. I worry about him being slot only, and Robert Woods and John Mechie III already being there and probably being slot only guys. Maybe Woods can move back out wide. Here with Houston taking Johnston, no concerns there. Woods can play on the inside. Nico Collins is your poor man's Gabe Davis, poor man's Donovan Peoples-Jones, vertical, tall, can go win in the air, vertically based, big guy on the outside. And then Quentin Johnston does a lot of that stuff while also being dynamic with the ball in his hands and being a guy you can get out into space and just make him into a satellite weapon. And I've also said a couple times where because of the speed and his frame, like the go balls, the post, working deep down the field, that's naturally his strength. But he's also so good, and he's such a special athlete that, like a college football playoff, he'll take a 6-yard drag to the house. So if you have that inside counter to steal a pass rush phrase, if you have that drag, that slant, kind of like DK Metcalf has, where that slant keeps DBs honest and that comeback keeps DBs honest, to where then you have to account for that, and then therefore the go ball is open again. So I think if he has that comeback, that slant, that drag, and then that run after the catch ability, that's what really unlocks Quentin Johnston, is more than just, hey, he's big, tall, fast, let him let him fall under this one, we're gonna throw it long, go get it, Quentin, something like that. That's where he becomes a true wide receiver 1 versus just a specialty deep threat. Then we get to the Jets. They take Broderick Jones. Yeah, I think this makes a lot of sense. Great movement skills despite having the ideal NFL frame and awesome strength in his profile. A lot of times we talk about big strong guys and they're not fast movers, like kind of DeJuan Jones. He falls into that stereotype a little bit more. Broderick Jones, I think, is a really good athlete and can fit that zone blocking scheme that Nathaniel Hackett is typically used both in Jacksonville, but then as the OC in Green Bay. It was Matt LaFleur calling plays, but you get the gist of it. So it's in his DNA, and I think that would make Broderick Jones a really solid fit. And then if they trust Mekhi Becton, man, that could be an absolute anchoring of a duo there at each tackle spot, but also good athletes that can get out and move, and in that blocking scheme, that can become really, really scary for opposing defenses. And then Max Mitchell becomes this really awesome swing tackle in the mix. But it comes down to how they feel about Mitchell as well as how they feel about Mekhi Becton. But I would love to see Jones added either way. Patriots take Joey Porter Jr. Yeah, this makes a ton of sense. He could be really good in the man press stuff that Bill Belichick's been known for in years past, but also if they want to play more zone, I think Joey Porter Jr. is an awesome cover 2, 4, 6 specialist. He can go get guys to the line of scrimmage, and it's got 34-inch arms, and he's 6'2.5", and he runs a 4.45. Like, he'll be just fine, occupying space, whether it's at the line of scrimmage, quarters is basically man, and it's the same thing outside corner assignments in cover 6. So would love this fit. And again, whether it's man or zone, whatever Bill Belichick wants to do, he becomes a fit. And I think Belichick's done an okay job and a serviceable job with the Jonathan Jones, the Jack Jones of the world, and those guys are solid players. But what happens to that secondary if you give them a legit shutdown guy? Do they harken back to what it was when Stephon Gilmore was there and New England's defense was one of the toughest in the league to play? And then of course you go back even further than that, there was almost always a shutdown guy on the outside in that New England defense. So could Joey Porter Jr. be able to do that and take New England back to those days? I think the potential is there for that. Then at 15, Green Bay is going to take Michael Mayer. I don't ultimately think they go pass catch in the first round. And with Jackson Smith and Jigba here, if I'm going to make the argument they're going to go offense round 1 as like an FU to Aaron Rodgers and Gutekunst, making this pick out of spite, it'd be JSN working out of the slot. But I understand Michael Mayer is like Robert Tonyan, but better. Really solid blocker. 4.7 speeds, nothing to write home about, but it's not bad. Like, I think we need to understand the differentiation points of like, you're a bad athlete, you're an average athlete, and you're a good athlete, good to great. And Michael Mayer's just like an average athlete. And that doesn't mean that he's terrible. But we focus so much on the guys with special athleticism that we forget about those guys who are middle-of-the-road athletic. Michael Mayer, Jordan Addison, just to name a few. Like, they are going to be just fine at the NFL level because they're so refined and they're so technically sound. Their positions, Michael Mayer, crisp route runner, soft hands, can find the soft spot in zone, and again, good blocking ability. Like, he doesn't need... It'd be great if he ran 4.4, right? Like, then we're talking about someone really special here, talking about kind of Kyle Pitts 2.0. But nevertheless, he doesn't have that top end speed. That doesn't mean he's a bad player. I don't think Green Bay goes pass catcher round 1. If they did, Jackson Smith and Jig was the more interesting argument for me to make. But Mayer, I've seen mocks where he falls to the second round. Maybe Green Bay does what they did last year, trades up, kind of similar to what they did with Watson. Maybe. Just maybe. Then we get the Commanders at 16. Devon Witherspoon. Man, I would love this fit. I think the most NFL ready of these guys, despite how much I love Christian Gonzalez and I really love Joey Porter Jr. and what he could be, I think Witherspoon is the most NFL ready of the bunch. Very willing tackler, hard hitter, and I almost wonder if he gets older, when he gets older, if he doesn't like hit his way out of the league, could he move inside to play nickel and kind of have like a Charles Woodson-esque, career arc, or could he move to safety, kind of have a Kareem Jackson arc? I think that could be something that's in play here. Obviously, you draft this guy and you worry about the next 4/5 years. You have control of him. We'll figure out the rest later. But I think this would be an awesome fit. I think he could play that cover 3 that Washington is typically implementing, but also man press, go let this guy get wide receivers to the line of scrimmage and let him lock down your opposing number 1 wide receiver, right? Like, that's why you make this pick. So sudden and such a good agile athlete, but also hits his top speed in like 2 steps. The acceleration is a key cog in the mix here. I'd love to know what the 40 actually is for Witherspoon, but I think based off the agility and the acceleration, he'll have plenty of athletic traits to stand and be a more than competent starter at the NFL level. Then Pittsburgh takes Nolan Smith. I wouldn't be surprised by this. I don't know if this is I know Bud Dupree had a visit with the Steelers. I don't know if that's been locked up, and maybe by the time you're seeing this recording, it has been. So if they do that, I think Edge is probably taken out of question here because it'll be, Watt, Highsmith, and Dupree. But in the event that they don't and Dupree decides to go elsewhere, this becomes interesting. I could be entertained by this. Pittsburgh typically drops their linebackers into coverage, so they prioritize guys who are good athletes, and that is definitely Nolan Smith. So having him drop back out into coverage could be a really fun way to utilize that athleticism. But also, you look at Pittsburgh and what they've done with Alex Highsmith kind of getting better and better as a pass rusher year over year. Bud Dupree started to figure it out and then kind of left Pittsburgh and kind of lost a lot of that momentum. TJ Watt, one of the best pass rushers in football. And that's always kind of been an area where, other than there's like this 2 to 3 year stretch before they got Watt where they were looking, the Jarvis Jones of the world. Oh God, that was a name I didn't think I'd ever say again. But they were looking and they had a hard time. But typically, Pittsburgh is a pretty good organization of drafting and developing these guys. So Nolan Smith, this guy with uber athletic traits, and maybe the alignment at Georgia's part of it, but pass rush production just isn't there. Could Pittsburgh be the place to get that out of him? I think that'd be a really fun pairing and a fun place for Smith to land. The Lions take Darnell Washington to a couple of Bulldogs. Lions fans, let me know what you think about this because, look, I know a lot of people say that they moved on from Hockenson because tight end in their offense is not that big of a deal. And that's totally understandable, right? Like they were about to have to pay Hawkinson, and when you had Ben Johnson as your OC, you give him the pieces he needs, and if tight end's not one of them, don't worry about it. But we are talking about Dan Campbell, former tight ends coach and assistant head coach in New Orleans. Like Darnell Washington with his blocking ability, he kind of feels like a perfect fit for who Campbell wants at tight end, but also a great fit into that culture. I would be really entertained by this. But are you going to draft a tight end at 18 when you're a team that has holes on defense? And really the calling card of Washington is his blocking ability. Like you compare him versus the team almost 10 picks later in Cincinnati, actually exactly 10 picks later in Cincy, they have very few holes in their roster. Do they have places they can get better? Absolutely. Every team does. But their holes versus like the Lions defense, and just focusing on the Lions defense and the holes there, it's not really the same argument. So for the Bengals, I think they can afford themselves the opportunity to draft a blocking specialist tight end, because what's the biggest weakness of Cincy's roster? I would argue it's the offensive line still. I mean, we'll see. I mean, right tackle right now is a bit of a question mark in Cincy. So drafting Washington gives you a little bit of an insurance policy there. For Detroit, it's like, okay, you're going to go with this blocking tight end instead of an edge rusher, that 3-tech, that Kalijah Kancey could be a really awesome add here. Linebacker, if you feel like that's a better route than Alex Anzalone, I don't know, but I am really fascinated. I love the player to team destination, but I don't know, based on the Lions roster, if it's worth taking a tight end at 18. So hopefully hopefully that point makes sense. Maybe if Washington makes it to the second round, the Lions can make that pick happen, but I'm not too sure that he does. Then the Bucs take Will Levis. He falls here too. Wow. So in the Bucky Brooks mock, man, if memory serves, Levis wasn't even picked, which is crazy. I mean, the Minnesota at minimum should be like, hey, well, this is a guy that a lot of people think should go in the top 10. Let's try to see if he's our Kirk Cousins replacement, right? And then he also had Anthony Richardson fall to 20. So we're not quite going that hard here with Bleacher Report's mock. But, man, if Levis made it all the way to 19, this would be an awesome spot for him to go. I don't know if it really matches up with Tampa's, timeline, because I almost think that they prefer Caleb Williams in 2024 than Will Levis in 2023. But for Levis, I mean, this guy who, at Kentucky this last year, I don't really think Rick Sparangelo was a great OC, especially compared to Liam Cohen in 2021, who, was hired by Sean McVay. I think that speaks to how good of an OC he could potentially be, and he's now back at Kentucky. But the offensive line was a mess. The pass catchers were a mess. Really, Chris Rodriguez was the only other player on that offense that deserves to play on Sundays, in my opinion. You send him to Tampa, and it's like, you got Mike Evans, you got Chris Godwin, you got Russell Gage, you got Cade Otton, and, they need another tackle, and they could use another interior offensive lineman, but comparatively speaking, I don't know if that offensive line is as big of a dumpster fire as Kentucky's was. So it becomes a really interesting spot for him to go. But again, I don't know if this really matches up with the Bucs timeline. I almost wonder if they would pass. Like, I almost think it's more likely Levis would make it to 23 and be drafted by Minnesota than the Bucs would here, because again, I think they'd rather just play the 2024 draft lottery and say, hey, we get Caleb Williams, or hey, we get Drake May, or Baker Mayfield figures it out and becomes their future franchise guy. I think that would almost be Tampa Bay's preference, but the value here is undeniable. So if he does make it to 19, that's an A-plus pick in my book. Just take a swing at the bat of someone with that much upside and that many traits. Seahawks then take John Michael Schmitz. I've had this play out in a mock, but it was with Seattle trading back. So if you're a Seahawks fan, let me know if you had to stick and pick here at 20. Would you be okay with JMS? I don't think it's a bad addition whatsoever. And we're seeing John Michael Schmitz, the mock earlier this week, he goes to the Giants at 25. Because there's so many teams that Seattle made the playoffs last year, the Giants made the playoffs. There's so many teams that are in that conversation, in that mix, that centers the weak spot on their offensive line. So, is it worth JMS at 25? Yeah, maybe it is. Is it worth him at 20 then? Because once you say he's worth it at 25, it's like, okay, well now Seattle has to, weigh with the conversation. Well, if we don't take him here at 20, Giants are going to take him at 25. So, yeah, I could honestly see this. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. This is probably about the highest I could see him go. But nonetheless, I don't think it's impossible. And, it's the one last major missing piece of that Seattle offensive line. Do I think they can get better than Damian Lewis? Yes. Do I think they can do better than Phil Haynes? Yes. But center right now is a glaring hole in that offensive line. Then we get to the Chargers taking Zay Flowers. Yep, I'm totally here for it. Mocked it a ton myself, adding some additional speed in that offense. And, Mike Williams at his pro day ran 4.59 or 4.49. That's what it was. But again, pro days, typically inflated number, so let's just call Mike Williams what he is. He's a 4.5 guy. Josh Palmer, 4.5 guy. Keenan Allen ran 4.7, and I think he's actually faster than that, but maybe at this point in his career, he is closer to that 4.7 mark than the high 4.5 to low 4.6 that he probably was when he was younger. That's not a lot of speed. You know what I'm saying? So adding a guy who runs low 4.4s, but also like a 1.5, 10-yard split, that's dynamism, and that's speed over the top. And this guy's also a great yak weapon. So Kellen Moore, if he wants to work that underneath stuff and kind of have Zay Flowers occupy and fill the role of what CeeDee Lamb did in Dallas and be that yards after the catch, get him the ball on bubble screens, get him the ball out in space. I think Zay Flowers could be that guy. I'm not saying he's going to be CeeDee Lamb, not by any stretch, but I think he could occupy two roles. Be that, bubble option, that yards after the catch threat that CeeDee was in Dallas, but also give this team some much needed speed on the outside. Because I like Palmer, I like Keenan Allen, I like Mike Williams, but they need some more over-the-top threats. Then we get Brian Brzee to the Ravens. I don't hate this whatsoever. Calais Campbell leaving. Yeah, this actually makes a lot of sense. I've never even thought about it, really. It's been wide receiver and corner as first-round options for the Ravens, but I could see them just, sticking to their ways. Best player available. Okay, Brian Brzee, with his upside, to us, is the best player available. And he's 6'5", he's 300-plus pounds, and he moves really well for that size. Yeah, we'll take a shot on him. And Baltimore's been a spot where they have a pretty solid track record of drafting and developing guys. So for Brian Brzee, it's like, man, there's not many organizations I'd rather see you go to. So obviously a big question mark right now with Baltimore. What's going to happen with Lamar? At the time of this recording, it's still kind of a cloud of mystery around that situation. But, ignoring that, I think this makes sense in a lot of ways as a Calais Campbell replacement. I'm actually really glad that BR made this pick because I have not seen it yet in any mocks. Vikings add Jackson Smith and Jigba. Man, this would be awesome. They take, Justin Jefferson, who, in 2019 primarily played in the slot, but before that had snaps out wide. But then you add JSN. Could they do the same thing here? A guy who lived out of the slot, could they move him out wide? Maybe not. But also Kevin O'Connell's going to implement three receiver sets. So either way you spin it, it's going to be just fine. They did sign Josh Oliver as a second tight end, so maybe they do want to do more two tight end stuff, and maybe that does move JSN out wide. But nevertheless, this team needs another wide receiver. And Adam Thielen was losing a step, and by the end of the year, and in that playoff game in the wildcard round, it was Justin Jefferson and TJ Hockenson. It was that 1-2 punch, and then Dalvin Cook, I guess, is a receiving threat out of the backfield. You get one more pass catcher, specifically the wide receiver position, and this offense gets really, really scary again. And JSN with that 6'5", 7'3" cone, that short area explosiveness to get open like he does, and you see that on tape, and he's just so explosive out of routes. And then you throw in the fact that he's got such solid hands, like. There's nothing worse than guys that get open but then can't hold on. I'm talking to you, Jerry Jeudy, who I liked. He was my wide receiver one that year, by the way. But anyways, getting back on track here. But he's also got sneaky contested catch ability. Like, he's physical. He's strong. He may not be Quentin Johnston, 6'3", and he may not be Michael Wilson, 215 pounds, but this guy plays strong. Like, he's physical. So that plus the sure-handedness, the great route running ability, and the explosiveness out of breaks. I mean, yeah, this would be an awesome addition. It'd be like getting Adam Thielen again in his prime, but maybe even better, honestly. I was talking the other day about, maybe his comp should be Cooper Kupp. And, dude, Cooper Kupp plus Justin Jefferson, if it did work out that way, would be insane, right? So, anyways, let's talk about the Jags taking Darnell right here. If you're a Jags fan, let me know your comfort level about Walker Little. Honestly, I haven't had a whole lot of conversations with Jags fans about it, but I know there's some out there that like Walker Little. I liked Walker Little. The biggest concern for me coming out of Stanford was the injuries. And really, he hasn't been on the field long enough for us to see whether that's still going to be an issue. But if you believe in Little, then maybe guard's an option here, Osiris Torrance or something along those lines. Brian Branch could be a fun add here, of course. I love Brian Branch to the Jags as a fit. That's long been one of my favorite player to team destination landing spots. But Darnell Wright does make a lot of sense if you do have some concerns about Walker Little, or if you're unsure about Walker Little and don't want right tackle to become a problem spot. Because worst comes to worst, Walker Little then is just like a solid swing tackle, or Darnell Wright then is a solid swing tackle. So either way you spin it, this is kind of a move that really doesn't have any major detriment to your team. It's not going to do anything that hurts you, but does potentially add a potential upgrade at right tackle. But it comes down to how you feel about Walker Little. I liked him as a prospect, but haven't gotten to see a whole lot of him at the NFL level. So a little bit of a TBD for me. Then the Giants take Joe Tippmann. So, wow, we get two centers in the first round. So, JMS goes 20. Tippmann, in turn, goes 25. I don't know if we get both these guys in the first round, but I could definitely see one of them. And if we get two, I'd be a little surprised, but I understand, right? Like, again, Seahawks, one glaring hole in that offensive line. Center. Giants, don't love Josh Azudu at left guard, but one glaring hole in the offensive line. Center. So, go draft the 6'6" guy who might be the best moving interior offensive lineman in this class, or at least best moving center in this class. You know what? Cody Mock's an interesting player, so don't want to group in the same conversation as Tippmann. But nonetheless, 6'6", 6'7", got good strength, can get you to the second level because of that movement skills. Yeah, multi-year starter at Wisconsin. There's a lot to love here. So I don't know if I would have two centers go in the first round, but teams will draft with need, especially, again, Seattle made the playoffs. Giants made the playoffs. They're thinking about being a winning team for the long run. So they're going to say, hey, what's our hole? Okay, cool. We'll draft Tippmann. Okay, we'll draft Michael Schmitz. I could totally see it playing out that way. Cowboys then get Bijan Robinson. I think this would have Jerry Jones jumping with joy. I think legitimately they would cut to the war room and Jerry Jones would just be throwing a party. He'd be hooting and hollering. He'd be having a time. But this is the shining toy to replace Zeke with, right? Like you move on from that, and that was like Jerry Jones, kind of prized possession of that offense in a lot of ways. He loved Zeke Elliott. Said, we're a better team when Zeke's touching the ball a lot. All that sort of stuff that you used to hear. Bijan then in turn kind of pair him up with Tony Pollard. They're both great receivers, but Bijan has much more power than I think Pollard can run with, but also has the ability to win with speed and elusiveness and has long speed. Maybe not to the extent Pollard or other guys in this class do, but a guy that can win in so many different ways, both on the ground and through the air. Yeah, this again feels like Jerry Jones' kind of dream scenario here. Then at 27, the Bills take Addison. Actually, 2 consecutive grade the box where this fit ends up happening. And I sung the praises of it on Monday, and I'm singing the praise of it again now. Love it, love it, love it, love it. This is kind of like getting Stephon Diggs light into that offense. Allows you to potentially trade Gabe Davis because I don't know if I want to extend him. Like I don't know. I'm just kind of wishy-washy right now on Gabe Davis. So I'm glad I'm not Billy Bean or Brandon Bean having to make that decision. But also, if we do keep Davis for let's just say the rest of his rookie contract, Khalil Shakir was a 5th round pick. I like Khalil Shakir. I think he should have gone further or earlier than 5th round, but. And I think they could do more with him in this offense as opposed to just taking advantage of his speed, utilize him more as a yak weapon, and have him be an underneath threat more to try to open up the middle of the field for Stephon Diggs. But I digress. Addison would be a better player in the slot. He just would be. He just is a better football player. There's a reason we're talking about him as a first rounder versus Shakir, who, hey, he fell to the 5th round. He is a 5th rounder then by virtue. This would be an upgrade, and don't be afraid to get better. It's a team that wins through the air, so adding one more pass catcher like Addison, it's really, really fun. Bengals then draft DeJuan Jones. I could see it. My problem with this would be Darnell Wright's gone, so Wright would be my preference if you're going to draft a right tackle here. And I still love Anton Harrison. He's my OT3, so that would be my preference over all of them. But Jones, a lot of people are comparing him to Orlando Brown Jr., and I get it. Like, not the best mover, but when he gets his hands on you because he's so strong and he has those long arms, you're kind of nullified. You're out of the play. Do I think he'll struggle with some speedy edge rushers? Yeah. Do I think he'll be a solid run blocker? Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is very Orlando Brown Jr.-esque. So I feel like having 2 of the same types of guys could be a little bit of an issue. But, hey, if La'el Collins is going to miss time or if he's just going to hit a wall and not play well like he did last year, you need to have this contingency on the roster. You got to have that replacement. And honestly, if you draft Jones, I'd be surprised if Collins is even the week 1 starter. Honestly, just honest. I mean, we'll have to see how camp goes and what Jones looks like in the preseason. Don't want to rush and put the horse in front of the cart. But yeah, this is your Collins insurance here, and also Collins got two more years in this deal. I think after this year, no guaranteed money. So yeah, this is your long-term right tackle here. So I'd be interested to see how him and Orlando Brown Jr. would look and play, and how teams would attack those 2 guys, given they have similar strengths and similar weaknesses. Then we get B.J. Ojulari going to the Saints. Interesting. So you already have a fair amount of bulk with Cam Jordan and Peyton Turner. So could you take a flyer on the sub 250 edge rusher? I think you could. I think that'd be fun. And a guy who knows how to be an edge rusher. Him and Isaiah Foskey, I think maybe more than any other edge rusher not named Will Anderson, knows how to stack and play the game of being an edge rusher, like setting up one move, going to the counter, then after, and like giving it off to tackle a look to then kind of come back to it and then change it later on. And this guy added the inside counter over this last year at LSU. I think he could have gone back to college to get a little bit more weight, a little bit more strength in his profile. But him adding the inside counter to me is just like, man, this guy's just going to be a great pass rush specialist. And, while you have Cam Jordan, that's exactly what Ojulari would be here. He'd be your 3rd pass rusher. He'd be your DPR. And he'd be an awesome DPR, like no doubt about it. But maybe with year or 2's time, you kind of bulk him up and then he becomes your Cam Jordan replacement. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities for Ojulari. So actually I like that fit a ton for New Orleans. Then the Eagles take Deonte Banks, and yeah, this is about as low as I've seen Banks go in a mock in some time. Yeah, but there's a lot of other names you want to talk about. We get 2 centers in the 1st round, right? We get a couple tight end. I understand this is what pushed Banks down the board, and Brzee goes 22 to the Ravens. I would have loved that fit for Banks, but I understand. And because of that, also no Kalijah Kancey. That's kind of interesting here. I'm just realizing that. Anyways, back on track. Deonte Banks, that would be really, really fun. And for Philadelphia, it's like, yeah, you got Bradbury back for 3 years and Slay this year plus 2 more with that restructure. And then you sign Greedy Williams, who, man, if there's an injury, God forbid, to Slay or Bradbury, I think Greedy Williams could be a sneaky breakout guy. And he's on a 1-year contract, so that's nothing crazy long-term unless they're able to, work that out. But if you're already paying Slay, already paying Bradbury, if Williams hits the field and impresses, he's probably going elsewhere. So I would love corner in the first round for Philadelphia, but I just don't think they will now that they got Williams. They drafted Zach McPherson 2 years ago. I think in their mind, they're set at the position, but adding Banks, specifically if you played Banks in the nickel. Like, I know they have Avonte Maddox, but let's just take him out of the equation. Banks on the inside. It's this man press 4-3-5 corner with Slay and Bradbury on the outside. That would be insane. Like, how do you pass against that trio of corners? Like, that would just be insane. To me, that's like offensive nightmare fuel. Like, I just legitimately don't know what you would do against that. And Avonte Maddox, I don't think he's a guy that is keeping you away from drafting Banks if you think he's worth being a first-round pick if you're Philadelphia. But, again, like I said, I think they have confidence in their cornerback room, I beg your pardon, and I think they like McPherson. I think they like Williams. That's why they signed him. And, again, I'm calling it now. If Williams sees the field in a somewhat sizable role, I think he could be a breakout candidate this year. I loved him coming out of LSU. And then, final pick of the first-round mock, the Chiefs take Tucker Kraft. Oh, my goodness. So, a little bit of a reach down the tight end board in my opinion, but hey, add a dynamic athlete with great yards after the catch ability when you already have Travis Kelce, implement more 2 tight end sets. That could become an absolute, we were just talking about, it'd be nightmare fuel with Deonte Banks playing in the slot for the Eagles. This could be nightmare fuel for linebackers going against the Chiefs and safeties for that matter too, because Tucker Kraft, like Kelce, has great size. He's not just a fast tight end. He's a fast, tall, big guy, and also this opens up the door. Like, Kelce can't play forever. Could Kraft eventually assume that role? Having those two play together would certainly give me more confidence than being able to do that. So really, really interesting fit. And I'm thinking more about tight end to the Chiefs here in a loaded tight end class and what that could do to open up that offense and how many different things that Andy Reid could do with a second tight end in that offense. Because, because he's such a creative guy. I would just love to see him add that extra element to that offense that we just haven't really seen. Like, Noah Gray's fine, but give me a Tucker Kraft, give me a Dalton Kincaid if he makes it that far, give me a Michael Mayer. I think there's a lot more potential there as a receiver paired up with Travis Kelce. But anyways, long tangent aside, that is going to do it for my grade the mock of this latest Bleacher Report first round 2023 mock draft. A lot of stuff in here that I liked, and I'm kind of scrolling across so you can see each and every pick, but also buying myself some time to kind of deliberate and give myself a grade here. 2 centers was interesting. I'll give it an 87. I'll go 87. I think this was a mostly really solid draft, and also some different fits and some different orders of edge rushers, wide receivers coming off the board, which I always appreciate, but also some fits like Zay Flowers there at 21 that I absolutely adore. John Michael Schmitz makes a ton of sense there. I don't know if Levis falls that far, but nonetheless, you get my point. But if you're a fan of any of the teams that had a first round pick, be sure to leave your thoughts down below in the comment section. Did you like it? Did you love it? Are you somewhere there in between? However you feel about it, let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. But hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button. It seriously would help me and the channel out a ton. And if you're new around here, want to see more football content in your life, just hit that big red subscribe button. Well, that is going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I am signing off.